Hey everybody, this is Brody from Brody's Garage. Today is March 18th, and this is episode 28. I have a lot of things to share with you guys. Let's go. Fittings, and more fittings. Man, I had no idea how much I would have to spend in dollars and time just getting fittings to work for this entire system. And there are multiple systems on this car. We got plugs here for the intercooler. We've got breather fittings. We've got a catch can and related fittings there. We've got a fuel pressure regulator and AN fittings. This is my first attempt at making AN fittings, and we'll talk about that. That guy goes right up there. Back there we have the Motion Raceworks steam vent kit block. I've got some more fittings to make for that. Boy, oh boy, the list goes on and on. For the fuel rails, I had to, because of the tight clearance here to the firewall, get a pair of these banjo fittings from, I believe it's Radium Performance. Yeah, Radium. This is an 8AN fitting, and I've got one on either side, and they can swivel to any direction. And the plan is to tie them together with a Y, which is right here. So I'll take the two 8AN fittings from the rails there, and they will join up with the feed line, which is a 10AN fitting. We've got a fuel filter that'll be in line right there. Right there. We've got on the return side, back to the tank, a Motion Performance flex fuel sensor mount. There's the sensor, and this is the bypass line. So this will be the return line going back to the fuel tank. And yeah, this will allow me to basically sense the ethanol content in my fuel, which will be programmed into the ECM, and it'll tell the computer, okay, he's running ethanol. We can bump up the timing and bump up the boost. This is all speculation, by the way. I haven't got this far yet, and it'll be something that I'll be experiencing for the first time. I may have to consult the advice of some professional tuners out there, but the bottom line is I'm moving forward with this thing one way or the other. It's going to happen. I've had a heck of a time with this fitting down here. This is the turbo oil drain line that will come down here and return to the oil pan. Now, if you recall, this tubing here, I cut this off and moved it back and chopped it off so that the engine would come back and down a bit, which helped tremendously in other areas. But it created a problem here because I'm now pretty much right up against this fitting. I originally had an AN style flare fitting and a hose end, but it would not get in there because it's rubbing up against this tubing. So I thought, well, maybe I'll go with a standard nipple. Nipple. That word always gets me. Anyway, this would just be a regular hose and a clamp. And it's okay on this side, but when you get to the other side, it becomes more of a problem because now I've got the steering rack sort of in the way. And so I've got to figure out if I can snake the hose, sort of down and around this steering joint here. So that's another challenge for another day. But hey, while we're down here, isn't it just beautiful? Would you just look at it? Moving on to the transmission, we have the two transmission cooler lines right here, which I've got a couple of 90s on. Pretty straightforward. I don't see a problem with that. And the two lines will go up front. Now then, the plan for the transmission cooler itself was to mount it up front here so that it can get some airflow. And I was thinking of putting it right there underneath the radiator core support and making some brackets to attach it there and to this cross member for the front end. So that's the plan for that. I will probably have to swap out these 90-degree fittings for straight fittings, and then the hoses will, you know, sort of join together and then make their way back to the transmission. That's the plan for that. For the crankcase ventilation and the oil catch can, I got one of these guys off Amazon. I found a company called Evil Energy. Of course, it's made in China, but you know what? Everything's made in China, even the name brand stuff. You know what? Really affordable pricing and pretty good quality stuff. Most of the fittings that I've purchased are from them. And so far, I gotta say, I'm pretty happy with the quality and fit. I was gonna run a single canister and dual lines to it, but I've decided to make it symmetrical because it's just how I am. And I'm gonna put one on this side and one on the opposite side behind the inner fender panel. So you see that line right there? That's where the fender panel is gonna live. And so the catch can is gonna be hidden behind that on both sides. That is the plan for that. And then I'll just run a direct hose from the valve cover straight through a grommet and into the fender well. I'm very proud of myself. I fabricated a little bracket there that mounts to the top of the timing cover, and originally it was just going to be there to support the fuel pressure regulator. And then I started messing around with the Motion Raceworks steam vent kit, and I realized I needed a high point to sort of have all of the ports, you know, tie to, and then from there it goes up to the radiator. And I thought, hey, I'll just put it on the back side of that fuel pressure regulator bracket. So far that's working out pretty well. I'm waiting on some 4AN 90-degree fittings so I can tie all four corners together. This one up here is going to be kind of a tight little U-bend. And then the plan is to have this common port come up here and tie into the radiator cap. Now, unfortunately, this port is already going to be used for the coolant overflow catch can. So I've already ordered a little aluminum bung, and I'm going to weld that into the tank up here at the top to tap into that. You might notice some piping here. What is this piping here? Uh-oh, did I do it? Yes, I did. Got myself a couple of turbos mounted. Now, I've been playing around with this for quite a bit here, and it wasn't until today that a light bulb went off and I flipped these left to right. I just could not get the geometry to work out with them on the opposite side, so I finally said, you know what, let's try flipping them around, and I gotta say it's working infinitely better. My plan is header, elbow here, which by the way, my good friend Chapo, I took these down to him and he TIG welded these up for me. They came without the flanges. The first pair that I bought had the wrong style flanges welded to them, so I sent those back, got them bare, got my own flanges and welded them to them. Thank you, Chapo, for that. And so the plan is we come out of here into a 3-inch, into a 2.5-inch reduction elbow, into the turbo. I've decided that the exhaust downpipe is gonna come back here and down, and then 3-inch all the way out the back. For the intake side of things, one little thing I should have noticed, and I should have caught it while I had the chance, was because of the asymmetry of the cylinder heads, you know, the ports are staggered or offset. So when you get two headers that are the same size and you put one on each side, well, the one on the passenger side is going to be shoved forward slightly because the ports coming out of the heads are shifted to one end. So because of that, this side is forward about 1 inch further than the driver's side. I haven't decided how anal I'm going to be about this, but I do like the symmetry. So I may end up chopping some off this collector or back off this elbow and bringing this back a bit to line things up perfectly. It's not that bad, but as you can see, looking across from this turbo outlet to that one over there, that one's back a bit. Which the great thing about this side is there's a lot more room and breathing room to kind of get around it. I'm still going to have to cut some more out of this core support so that I can get my filter on. There's my filters right there. And as you can see, you know, they're gonna stick out about yay, so they'll be poking through the core support. And if you get down to the front here, you can see that while I've cut that whole area out, originally this, you know, has all kinds of bumps and things. I think the horn originally mounted there and some other stuff. Maybe it was a washer reservoir. I forget now what the stock Nova had, but this core support was all bumpy and stuff. So I cut all that stuff out and kept it flat. And I'll probably have to go ahead and cut a, you know, half circle out of that right there so I can get the filter to come through, and it'll, you know, live somewhere in there. I went ahead and mocked up the bumper, and by the way, nothing fits out of the box. Even the brackets, they wouldn't even fit within the bumper itself. Just laying the bumper on its face on the ground, these brackets would not line up with the two square holes. So I had to do some hammering. I had to take a cutoff wheel and notch out the bracket so that it would fit up inside there a bit. Just, you know, like everything else, just a pain the entire way. But I got them on there. Also, thanks to Rudy at Modern Classics for sending me the bumper bolts like within a day. He got those things here really quick for me, so thank you, Rudy. And I'm pretty happy with the quality of the bumper and everything else. Also, my fenders. Big news here. You know, the guy from Tennessee, Daryl, shipped these out, and they made it finally, which was a real happy day for me to finally get these. I've got to say that Al and I spent quite a bit of time a couple days ago working on these fenders. As you can see, I still have not finished welding up the side molding holes and emblem holes yet, but the panels are starting to fall into place. This area here was a major ordeal. The cowl itself on both sides, but mostly on this side, was sitting so far above the fender and the door that the only solution was to take a cutoff wheel and go ahead and cut out a pie slice out of this thing and then hammer it down to sort of bring it closer to the door and the fender. Looking down the side here, we started with the door itself because the quarter is fixed. The quarter's not going anywhere. So we tried our best to line up the door with the quarter and get mostly this line here to work, because that's really the prominent line that goes down the car. Everything else can kind of be adjusted from there, but we got this line pretty good, and this line here is pretty good, and the gap is pretty good, and the contour is pretty well. Our plan is to do a little bit more hammer and dolly work here to get the contours really right. You can see right there it doesn't quite perfectly line up. We're going to use a spoon dolly and kind of get in there and pry the door out and tap in and, you know, keep working it back and forth until we get them both to match. I still have to grind this down flush and fill it like we did on the other side. We've got a little bit of an issue here at the back of the quarter panel. I think it's just the shape of the quarter panel itself. It, for some reason, on the passenger side is more straight up and down. It doesn't contour in at the bottom like it does on the other side. And so the gap here is really tight at the bottom of the bumper, and it gets wider at the top. Al has been just my savior, and he's been working all of this stuff back here so diligently. He had to completely, you know, fill all this in and shape this and bring it down to match the trunk lid more. We got the Eddie Motorsports billet taillight housings, and, you know, using that as a guide, it's coming along. He really had to spend a lot of time here, and we've got to notch one of the holes in the bumper brackets to get that in to come up slightly. As you can see, the gap is, and this is way better than it was when we first put it on, but it's a little, I think it's just a little bit low on this end over here. So we're going to try to get this bumper up a little higher, and the only way we can do that is to slot the hole a little bit further. But the ass end of the car is starting to shape up. That's kind of what it looks like right now. And then moving forward here, again, the door, we spent quite a bit of time lining up these doors. The fenders are just sitting on there right now. They are not bolted in completely. So don't judge everything, but I can tell you, my friends, that this gap here is getting pretty good. It's not quite there. I'm probably going to end up welding, as I did on the other side, welding up this door edge to close that gap a little tighter. This may also require some hammering down to get it to kind of match, but I'm going to do everything I can to get these gaps even and tight all around the car. Lots of work to be done on that, but I got to say, the bodywork is coming along. It's starting to take shape. I mounted my headlight bezels and threw the grill on there with just a couple of screws, and it started to take shape, my friends. The intake, we've got a couple of pieces of aluminum here that I chopped off with a chop saw and had Chopo, I feel like I'm saying a lot of Chopo and chop. Chopo welded these up for me, and I'm going to look to see if I can find sort of an S-style silicone hose that will go from 2.5 inch to 3 inch and make this S shape here. I may end up trimming this back a little further. You'll also notice it right here, the radiator nipple, there's that word again. The radiator nipple was sticking straight out to like here, and I knew that wasn't gonna work to get the hose on there. So I cut it back at an angle, and I'm gonna have to have that TIG welded to have it, you know, sort of 45 degree down to get underneath this pipe here. I don't really see a problem there. We do have an issue here with the AC compressor. This was the bulkhead fitting that came with the Holley kit, the front accessory drive kit. And as you can see, that ain't gonna work. It's going right into the header. So I believe I've seen a 90-degree bulkhead fitting, or possibly split into two fittings, where one will go sort of off to this side and then down, and this one will come forward and then down. But somehow we got to get those hoses, you know, down and over here in through the firewall. This is what's going on as of today. I'm very pleased to see 2 turbochargers sitting in the engine bay and pretty close. I mean, it's getting there to where I'm feeling really good about the mechanics of the car. I don't know if I mentioned already, but these headers are the second batch of headers I bought. I had a pair of Flowtech headers that are up there, and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna chop off the passenger side to even it up. And as you can see, there's the collector piece sitting up there. I'm scrapping that entire idea. Ended up going with these Amazon $185 shorty headers, and you know what? They're fine. People complained about the warpage on the flange. It's not that bad, and honestly, if you pull up the nuts, evenly, if you tighten them from the center on out, it kind of just pulls it in just fine. So I'm not too worried about leakage. They seem decent quality. My whole setup is pretty strong. I'm not terribly worried about, the bracing of this. So that's what's going on. All right, so that's the latest update with the Nova. I'm really happy with the progress. I got to say, things are starting to take shape, and it's starting to feel like a real car. It's a beautiful day here in Las Vegas, so I hope you guys are having a great one wherever you are, and I will see you on the next episode. Please don't forget to subscribe and like my videos. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.